Welcome to the ExecMBA podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to continue our ongoing spotlight on Executive MBA clubs and organizations with an interview with Remington, Roth and Josh Rubbelke. Rem and Josh are leaders of the Executive MBA Consulting Club, and I recently connected with them to talk more about their backgrounds, how they decided to pursue an MBA, the impact of their first year, what they have planned for the consulting club in the year ahead, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Remington Roth and Josh Rubbelke. Josh, Rem, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
It's great to have y'all here. I'm catching up with all of the new club organization leaders. Man, have y'all really been in the program for 10 months at this point? Class of 2023? Unbelievable.
It really is.
It's definitely hard to believe it. I saw something that said we were 53% complete. It's like, man, I don't know how this happened.
That is awesome. Well, what a wonderful weekend. We're recording this on Monday and on a Monday in mid-June. The weekend in question was the mid-program celebration. It was, man, that was awesome to be on the roof deck with you, your classmates, and watch some awards get handed out, just enjoy a beautiful evening in Washington, D.C. So hope y'all were able to enjoy that too.
Yeah, it was my first time on the roof, 31st floor, 32nd floor, beautiful view of the city and the Potomac River. Definitely a strong pull for Darden, D.C. Metro.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. And other people brought their spouses too, so that was nice. Just meeting everybody's spouses or plus ones. It was pretty great.
Yeah, we had a +1 picnic cookout type thing back in the fall, right around the start of school. But it's nice to meet some of these folks who you hear about through the application process, and are there supporting their student, but you don't necessarily always get to meet everybody until maybe graduation. So it's nice to make these connections a little bit sooner in the process. So first and foremost, Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just managing school and work and life. And I think that's kind of something that you do throughout the whole program. And but I think I'm finally getting into the swing of it. So I'm doing pretty good. All
right, Rem, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'd say just about the same. Kind of really enjoying my time in the program, and then making the most of weekends where we're in person, and then also the most of weekends where we're not in person, because that's kind of your downtime to relax and recover.
That's right. One of the things we try to talk about here on the podcast is just how much gets packed into an OGR, an on-grounds residency, a weekend residency in the program. Yes, class is part of that, but there's always a lot of other things beyond just class. Learning team dinners, social outings. Feels like the class of 2023 always has a few things planned. I think there's different student groups who gather throughout the weekend. It's y'all stay busy.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Like every single on-grounds weekend, there's at least one event that I'm going to, and then I always try to work in a learning team dinner. And so you almost start scheduling multiple on-grounds residencies out because there's so many different people that you want to see, and it's your opportunity to be in person together.
Yeah. And Courtney, I don't know if you've had an interview with her yet, but she's our head of social, and she's sent out all these links for all of us to sign up for events that are coming up in the future. And so we have some great stuff coming up, like a golf outing, and we're actually going to Charlottesville to see the class of 2024. So that'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a very exciting week on grounds at the Darden School. So what you were invited to, I believe, was at the very end of that first week of school, there's a cookout. All, new first year students across the residential MBA, full-time MBA program, the part-time MBA, as well as the executive MBA. And at the very end, there's a cookout. And that's a historic week in the history of the Darden School. Never before had that group of students ever assembled. We've never had residential MBA, part-time MBA, and executive MBA students all together at the same time. So it's going to be an exciting time. I'm so glad that members of your class are coming down for it too.
Yeah, I think we're definitely looking forward to it. Anytime we can get out to Charlottesville, it's always a good time.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more about your respective stories, your background and experience, what you did before coming to Darden, and what you're up to right now. So, Rem, I'll come to you first. So, tell us a little bit more about you.
Okay. So I am a Navy veteran. I went to the United States Naval Academy. I was a math major there. And then I commissioned into the Navy as a nuclear surface warfare officer, which is just a fancy way to say that I drove ships and then later on operated nuclear reactors. So I spent a little bit of time overseas on my first ship, came back to the States, went to school through the Navy for nuclear power, and then went back to another ship before finishing up my time last summer at the end of a tour teaching at the nuclear power school. So I was drawn to Darden for a couple of reasons. My wife is a doctor who matched for residency here in Washington, D.C., and so I had strong ties to the area. And I also liked the idea of being able to start to work and get some sort of civilian experience while I was also going to school. So I actually have changed jobs so far in the program. So I started out at an engineering consulting firm who pitched themselves as management consulting done by engineers. And I found that that wasn't the greatest of fits for me. So I actually swapped roles, and now I'm working program management at the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, which is DARPA. So I've been enjoying that role, enjoying the program, and I'm looking forward to recruiting on grounds this fall for consulting.
All right, Rem, when you and I first met, you were living in Charleston and contemplating relocating to the DC area. So now you're here. Are you enjoying being in the DC metro?
Yeah, I do enjoy Washington, D.C. You know, Charleston, South Carolina is such a foodie town, and I thought that I was going to miss a lot of that. And don't get me wrong, I do miss Charleston, South Carolina, but there's so much to do in Washington, D.C. We found a bunch of new spots, and there's always another place to go explore. And that's one of the nice things about having so many classmates here as well. There's just an instant network of friends who have all their own favorite places, and we've really enjoyed kind of working through that.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about starting an executive MBA program or a program as you're moving to a new area. It becomes a way for you to meet a whole bunch of new people all at the same time. We've heard this a lot from some of our incoming part-time students who are outside of the DC area but relocating prior to the start of school, and they're like, I'll have 65 friends right away. I don't think I'd ever thought about it in that way, but I guess it works. You come to a new area and you're starting school. Congratulations. You got a brand new network. So, well, thank you for sharing that. And also no shortage of great restaurants here in DC. And I will say the class of 2023, y'all get out there. Y'all take advantage of the DC dining landscape. All right, Josh, tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. So I'm going to go way back. I'm originally from Arizona, and I came to the DC area for undergrad for architecture, and then went up to Syracuse for a grad school program in architecture. And so I like to joke that I wanted to get all the extremes of the weather before deciding where I wanted to settle. And so that's why I came back to the DC area and started my architecture career, which is like Rem, it's not a very typical business career. But did that for 6.5 years, and I really loved the problem-solving aspects of architecture, but I didn't like the day-to-day technical aspects of architecture. And so when the pandemic hit, there were a lot of layoffs that were happening actually at the company, and I got nervous. And so I started exploring business schools and exploring doing the MBA program to make a pivot into consulting, which would allow me to take my background in architecture, all of my soft skills, and then use that within the consulting industry. And so, I looked at a number of different schools, both full-time and executive programs, and ultimately decided on Darden because I had a great conversation with alumni and with Jim in career services, who convinced me that the opportunity cost is too great to go to a full-time program. And I would get a lot out of the Darden alumni network if I were to go to Darden. And so that's ultimately why I ended up choosing Darden. And it's been a fantastic experience. I did switched jobs in the middle of the program. I now work for a commercial real estate company, and still looking forward to doing the on-grounds recruiting and moving into consulting. But at least my experience now is allowing me to gain more of a business side experience that I can use to, I guess, as a stepping stone into the consulting industry.
Thank you both for sharing more about your background. And Josh, to your point about not a typical background for an MBA program, just had a conversation with the leadership of the Black Executive MBA student organization, and they were reflecting upon the same thing, which I feel like almost every guest who comes here on the ExecMBA podcast is like, well, my background's a little bit different than what people might assume for an MBA program, and that's the beauty of the Executive MBA program. One of my favorite things about it is you meet all sorts of people, different life stages, career stages, who study different things. Every time I do the "This is your class" presentation, I'm always fascinated by the mix of majors. I think pre doing this job, I assumed everybody in business school had gone to like, it's very sort of like I did finance, I did econ. And I think we had almost 50 majors for your class, and the quarter of the class, engineering and poli-sci, were either engineering or poli-sci majors. Kind of an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's incredible. Especially, I mean, like you said, I kind of assumed everybody was going to know business, and I'd be the only person who would struggle with finance or basically anything business related, economics. But it turns out, well, first of all, we have a very supportive group in the class of 2023. But secondly, there are other people who are struggling with me. So that was pretty great.
Well, it's all learning, right? We like to remind people that you're here because maybe you don't know anything about this stuff, and that's okay. And that's why you're here. So it's all good. So here you are, quarter 5, essentially 10 months into the program. You've already done LR1. Maybe you've traveled the world a bit on a global residency. Those trips have been up and running, had some students out there. And okay, you've been taking all these core classes. Josh, when you reflect on who you are now and where you are now in the program, how do you feel like you've grown and developed over this period of time?
Actually, it's been kind of incredible. So I came into the program as an individual contributor, and just being in a lot of these leadership classes and a lot of these a lot of the general management classes that Darden offers, it's really helped me grow as a professional. And so I feel more comfortable, especially in my current role where I'm managing a lot of projects and having to be in meetings where I'm face to face with the client and leading these meetings. And so just Darden has really allowed me to grow my confidence level, and then just all these friends and the network that I'm creating has been pretty incredible as well.
Yeah, all of those things, the confidence piece comes up time and again. I always ask everybody who says that, what has helped you grow in confidence? Like, what do you think about what is it about the experience that's helped you grow in that way?
Well, so at Darden, we have the case method. And so we are forced to, I won't say forced, but forced to really read through every case and think about our experiences and talk about these experiences in our own lives. But then because of that, you also learn from other people's experiences and what they have done in situations that may be similar to yours. And so you have this depth of knowledge from all these different people in your class that you can draw from when you go into situations at work and say, hey, you know what, I've been in this, maybe I haven't been in this situation before, but I can at least know what to do because somebody else has been in this situation before. And so just that, as well as, the professors leading us through these cases, it really contributes to the confidence level when you're in these situations after being at an on-grounds and going straight into the workforce.
Thank you for indulging that question. I'm always just intrigued by it because when I hear people reflect on the program, people oftentimes might expect to hear, I know a lot more about accounting. And that's probably true. But at the same time, the things that people really talk about are the sort of, this is how I've grown as a person. This is how I've grown as a professional. And it's more like on this confidence end of things, or their ability to communicate or understand other people, or whatever the case may be. Maybe it seems a little bit softer, but nevertheless, extremely powerful. So Thank you for that. Rem, coming to you, same question. Here you are, 10 months in. How have you grown during this time?
No, I mean, it's an excellent question, and Josh's answer is spot on. I mean, there are so many situations where maybe we're doing a case that's really centered on the financial crisis of 2008, and the professor's asking, is there anyone with personal experience with the financial crisis? And then all the hands in the room go straight up. There's someone who was buying a house and there were impacts of that. There was someone who was working at a big bank and there are impacts of that. And it really kind of brings the case to life when you can hear people around you discuss their personal experiences. And I would say that one of the main reasons that I came to business school is because coming from the military, I didn't have a lot of the business background. And so, I won't refute that the soft skills are incredibly important. But for me, the biggest single impact has been from global economics and markets, which is part of the core curriculum. Coming out of COVID, there are significant changes to both monetary policy and fiscal policy and impacts on the global economy. We've seen immense changes over the past 2 years. And we see that now with the problems with inflation, and just having the right frameworks to kind of digest that and see what's happening and why, and then maybe to predict what you might think is going to happen in the next few years, which is always difficult. I'm not claiming that I can now do that, but just to be able to understand the world around you just opens the aperture and has made a big impact for me.
Yeah, I will say, somebody who likes conversations and enjoys learning, I'm envious of you and your classmates from time to time, because y'all get to go sit in a class with such interesting, bright people and talk about things that are happening right now. Like, to be in a global economies and markets class while, Jay Powell, Janet Yellen, all these people are trying to figure out what in the world to do with the federal funds rate and how do we get inflation under control. And oh, by the way, this broader global context that everything's happening in, and how do we think through this? And if you're leading a company, what should you be focused on right now? That's an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny, but I was getting a haircut a couple months ago, and my barber asked me. He said, what's up with these prices? And I was like, do you really want an answer on that? And no joke, we ended up talking about inflation, and there I am getting a haircut explaining why prices are rising. And then the guy in the chair next to me turns his head and looks at me, and it's just like, where did you come from? What is this knowledge that you're bringing to the room? And I kind of had to take a step back and say, maybe I'm getting too much into it.
I love that. You never know where you'll draw upon your MBA. It could be a boardroom, could be at a barbershop. It happens all the time. All of the things that you've shared, I think speak powerfully, and y'all still have another year plus to go in the program. So it's right to celebrate at this time. And yet, you're rounding into the second year of the program. One of the cool things that happens this time of year, and a bit of the inspiration for our conversation today, is there is a changing of the guards. We have the second year students just graduated. Congratulations to our Executive MBA class of 2022 again. And now there are new club leaders. And every year on the podcast, we try to catch up with new club leaders. And one of the clubs that's been more and more active over the past couple of years is the Consulting Club. Really has done a lot to help students who are interested in this particular career path, learn about the career path, get ready for interviews, all these kinds of things. And Josh and Rem, you are both part of the leadership team for the Consulting Club. Before we get much further, though, can you tell us just a little bit more about what the Consulting Club is? Josh, can I come to you for this question?
Yeah, sure. So for us, what the Consulting Club is a way to, one, introduce people to the industry, and then two, prepare people for the rigorous interview process that happens in your second year when you go to on-grounds recruiting. And so the way that we do that is through webinars that we'll host, or case practicing. So we have an Excel spreadsheet that people can sign up for, where they can mix and mingle and make sure that they find a case partner to practice casing. But we also have professionals who come in and practice with us. But I think one thing different that we're trying to do from previous years is try to engage the part-time is the first time that they're coming in, but engage the part-time students and engage the first-year students earlier on so that we can introduce them to the consulting industry if they're interested in it, and so they can start thinking about it earlier on, because it's now June, and Rem and I are just now trying to get all of these different events established, and we're going to be recruiting for consulting in September. And so that's such a short amount of time. I think we would love to give them a longer runway to start thinking about these things.
So Rem, I want to pick up on what Josh just shared. In the Executive MBA program, you have their first year of the program or so to kind of explore, think about potential career paths. And if you're interested in participating in what's called on-grounds recruiting, or when employers looking to hire post-MBA for full-time positions, when they're interviewing Darden students, Executive MBA students can participate in that process. And so a lot of people, when they come into the Executive MBA program, are kind of interested in exploring different paths. So how did you land on consulting as something that you were curious about?
No, that's a great question. And for me, I had previously considered full-time programs, and, I kind of got super focused on the DC area, and I felt that Darden was the right fit for me. And through that, there are sort of maybe three major buckets that full-time MBAs go into, one of which is the consulting path. And what attracted me to the industry specifically is that there's immense, fantastic business training. So you are working on a lot of interesting problems in various industries. You get exposure to C-suite executives. You're working with incredibly talented peers, and you just learn a lot. I mean, there is a significant amount of effort that goes into being a management consultant, but that translates into what some people would say as, twice the business experience per year as maybe some other industries. And so that's the real draw for me, to kind of continue to build out my business toolkit, to get more exposure to different industries. And then, if I really enjoy it, I'll stay. And if not, there are fantastic exit opportunities that can become available. It would be kind of hard for me to say right now where I'll be 5 to 10 years from now, but that's kind of the mentality. Go somewhere, try it out, make sure that you're putting yourself in a position to progress and develop and keep options open. And consulting kind of is the best fit for that.
And Josh, it sounds like from hearing you tell your story, that consulting was something that was on your mind even before you started your MBA program, maybe somewhat similar to Rem. And he said, this is one of these things that I've been thinking about for a while. How did you land on consulting?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly true. So I had some roommates who were in consulting, working at the Big Four, and just seeing what their everyday was and the types of problems that they were solving. It was pretty fascinating to me. And I saw a similarity to architecture in that consultants come in and they solve a client's problem with, XYZ solution, where an architect will come in and solve a client's problem with a building or with, reconstruction of the interior space. And so a lot of those transferable skills that I would see between the two, with problem solving and creative thinking and just everything that you do in architecture, I was like, wow, I could actually go into consulting and be a consultant. And so I started thinking about that just in terms of more looking at going into the financial industry and looking at M&A, looking at corporate finance. And so that's kind of what drew me to consulting. And so that's kind of the part of consulting that I'm trying to get into. I'll look for any way to get into consulting, and then maybe one day switch to M&A consulting or switch to something more in corporate finance. But right now, I think the industry as a whole is where my mind is set.
That's great. All right. So you're busy Executive MBA students. You both are contemplating a career shift of sorts, recruiting for consulting, and you've decided to be involved in the leadership for a student organization. How did you decide that this was something that you wanted to do with your limited free time? Josh, what attracted you to this opportunity?
For me, it was, I came into Darden and I saw everything that everybody else was doing for the entire class, and I wanted to find a way to give back to my class. And so as an architect, I was like, well, I could either build somebody a house or design a house, or I can volunteer and be a co-president of the consulting club and try and help people pivot into a space or get a new job. And for me, that would be the best way that I can use my own abilities. And so that's why I ended up volunteering for the consulting club.
No one has asked you to design them a house yet?
No, not really. So I get a lot of people who say, hey, I've got a problem, and maybe I should start my own consulting business. But they come to me and they say, hey, my roof is leaking, or hey, my bathroom is like there's water all over the floor. Now the drywall is coming down, and like, what am I supposed to do about this? And so, I'll give my expert advice, and I'll tell them to hire a general. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's good. People haven't asked me to design a house, and I've done mostly commercial architecture in my career, so I wouldn't even know how to design a house, to be honest. So classmates, if you're listening to this, please don't ask me to design your house.
All right. Point taken. I was just curious whether somebody is taking you up on your architectural services. Also, at the same time, it's still early. You got another year or so in the program. You just never know.
That's true.
All right. And Rem, how did you decide that you wanted to be involved in the leadership of the consulting club?
Yeah, I mean, my path to leadership in the consulting club is actually through Josh. So I was getting ready for, starting to prepare for case interviews, which are a very unique aspect of the consulting on-grounds recruiting process. They give you a business situation of some sort, whether that's profitability or market sizing or a mergers and acquisitions case, and you solve that business problem real time, which is kind of a surrogate for solving a larger case over 6 weeks to 6 months in the consulting industry. So I wanted to work with Josh this summer as partners for case prep. And he said, I'm taking over the Executive MBA Consulting Club, and I think it'd be great to have you partner with me in that. And so I looked at my availability and honestly, I was excited about it. So I think Josh started referring to it a little bit, but the consulting club is pretty new for the executive MBAs. And if you think about the different categories as far as career plans go for the executive MBAs, you have one bucket of career switchers, one of climbers, and then another of entrepreneurs. So our class is already segmented into those three buckets, and then not everyone is interested in the consulting industry. So we end up with a smaller constituency that's involved in the executive MBA consulting club than maybe the full-time club. So it's kind of fun to get in on the ground floor and continue building out what that infrastructure looks like. And that's something that Josh started referring to about bringing in people earlier on, creating more outreach, and kind of building out what that looks like as far as helping folks meet their goals.
Yeah, I appreciate that point. I mean, it's still relatively early days with pretty much all of our executive MBA student organizations. Certainly, if the benchmark is the residential program, which has had clubs and organizations for much, much longer, still a relatively recent vintage on all of these clubs, even the ones like the Black Executive MBA student organization or the Network of Executive Women that have been around for 5 or so years at this point. But that's really, kind of a story that tracks in parallel with our launch here to the DC area and the growth of the program to around about 135 students per matriculated class. That's kind of what pushed things ahead and accelerated some of this extracurricular engagement. And I've been really excited as a member of the admissions team here to see students connecting around career interests. Felt like the affinity groups made sense as a first step, but had hoped to see, consulting club and tech club and maybe a financial services club, or, as people kind of, again, as part of this program, are interested in exploring paths, and what better way to do that than to have some formal club architecture to kind of give some structure to that engagement. So Josh, when you look ahead and what you have planned for the consulting club, or what you hope to accomplish? You mentioned wanting to leave a mark and contribute to your classmates' experience. What are you hoping to accomplish in the year ahead?
Well, what I'm hoping to accomplish is get the majority of our classmates to get an offer in consulting from the on-grounds recruiting. I mean, I think that's kind of the big thing is, Rem and I will feel like we've done our part for the class if we are able to provide the resources for our classmates to be successful. And if our classmates are successful, then that will be fulfilling for us. Just seeing people being successful in on-grounds recruiting or being successful working through their networks if they decide not to do on-grounds recruiting, if they decide to do spring recruiting or try to do the more experienced hire route, just making sure that people accomplish their career goals. And I think that we want to be here for them and we want to be able to help them through that.
Rem, anything that you'd like to share on this point of what you're looking forward to accomplishing in the year ahead?
Yeah, I'll just add to what Josh has said. I mean, the immediate goal is by far help our classmates be successful for on-grounds recruiting. But after that, we'll still have another 6 months of time left in the program. And I think the focus at that point, maybe mid-fall, starts to shift towards how can we build out a better roadmap or playbook to hand over to the next class. Some people listening may not know, but the recruiting timeline in general for executive MBAs is during that second year. There are, of course, people who are changing jobs throughout the program, and there are always just-in-time opportunities. But the executive MBA kind of ties into the full-time MBA at that second year mark. And there are plenty of people in their first year who are undecided about which career path they want to take. And many people just haven't heard of consulting. So the first thing that we can do is just start to create panels of people who can come in, either Darden alumni or connections that we've met along the way that can just explain what life is like and what the opportunity might be. And then you can start to sift through and find the people who are really energized by it. And then Josh and I can get them started even earlier than we did.
Well, can we talk a little bit about the interview process and case prep? Because I think for a lot of our listeners, this might be the first time they're hearing this and wondering why this is important. So, Josh, why is case prep important?
Well, I mean, unless you're a genius and can go in there and blindly do a case interview, you definitely need to prepare for it. And there are multiple resources that we give as the consulting club. We also have resources that we get from the the residential program. They've given us resources because they've been around for a lot longer. So they have case books, they have camps that they do that they can give us those resources and we can disperse them with our own members. But yeah, when you go into an interview for consulting, there are multiple rounds where they'll come in and they'll give you a problem, and it'll either be an interview-led case or interviewer-led or interviewee-led. And you have a problem, you need to ask the right questions. You need to take those questions, and if it's a profit case, you need to look at return on investment. You need to look at the margins. You need to look at all the different costs associated with it, and then take those costs and come up with a recommendation to the person who's interviewing you to how they can proceed or move forward. And so it's time after time after time. You have to keep going back to this kind of interview process because there are, I think, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews where you have to do these types of cases. And so, if you're not prepared for that, you could really fail. And so for Rem and I, we're starting early, and we're making sure that we're up to speed on the different types of frameworks that we can do, and doing case math, which is you're not allowed to use a calculator, so you have to be really good at mental math. And as an architect, I'm okay at math, but I'm a little rusty, I would say, because I don't use it all the time. So definitely need to practice that. I don't know, Rem, if you have more to offer than that.
Yeah, if we zoom out a little bit, I think what the firms are looking for is one, do you know what you're getting into, and is this a good fit industry-wise? So I kind of mentioned earlier, a case interview is a surrogate for life as a consultant. So you're kind of taking 6 weeks to 6 months of effort and distilling it into half an hour. And part of the path is, if you enjoy doing case prep, you're going to enjoy being a consultant. If you find yourself working on these mini cases and you say, this isn't really my thing, when you're doing that for a living for 6 weeks to 6 months, then maybe that's not the best choice. So part of it is figuring out fit. The next is, if you're in one of these interviews, they oftentimes become collaborative. You're sitting next to someone who might be your future colleague. So they're kind of assessing you on, is this someone I want to work with in the future? Can we collaborate together? Are we a fit personality wise? And then the third one is just sort of an intellectual horsepower background kind of assessment. Like, is this someone who has learned enough about the business world and kind of brings the necessary intelligence to kind of tackle one of these problems? And normally that one is more a matter of being polished rather than kind of having the raw horsepower, if you will. But I'd say that those are probably the three objectives from the firm's perspective. And then it's just a matter of making sure that you're ready to go to accomplish it.
And so practice and practice some more and practice some more. And I think one of the hardest things for executive MBA students, and this comes up a lot, is finding the time for that. And so we've had executive MBA students have success through this recruiting process and navigate case interviews very successfully. But you got to be able to carve out the time. So Rem, Josh, what would you offer on this point? Because I think this is something that we talk with executive MBA students when they're in the prospective process, understanding that like career is like having another class. When it's busy, when you're trying to do all this, you might as well treat it like that because you got to prioritize it. So Rem, what would you say on this point?
I think you just need to be really clear about what your goals are when you come in. And that goes for the program as a whole. A lot of people come into the program and they say, I want to develop professionally so that I can climb within my organization. And they're going to focus a significant amount of time on just achieving those specific goals. And other people, Josh and I fit this category. Maybe our main goal coming into the program was a little bit of developing business sense, but also making a big career swap. And so if you take a step back and say, one of my biggest goals in being in the program was to support this industry change, this function change to consulting, it starts to make it easier to find the time. And there are a lot of resources. Our classmates are very helpful. Learning teams are very helpful to kind of share the load so that you can make it through the coursework as well. And then, of course, the MVPs of the program, spouses, they're part of this too. And, my dog, who is sitting here at my feet trying to get me to play with him, he feels it to some extent. So, I'd say that there's a little bit of sacrifice and time to be made, but it's worthwhile as long as you keep your goals in perspective.
Yeah, I thought we might have had an unannounced third guest for the podcast interview. Rem, what's the name of your dog?
His name is Oban. He's a mini Labradoodle. He's got a toy donut that he really likes. And he doesn't understand why I don't like it quite as much. So if that's what you're picking up on, I apologize for that.
It's all good. We've had kids, we've had dogs, we've had all kinds of people join the podcast. So Josh, anything on this time point, particularly when things get heavier, you're trying to get ready for these interviews?
Yeah. So actually, Rem and I had a conversation maybe last week about, so right now we're going to be going into electives, and we get to choose our electives. Right now we're in the bidding process, which, we're given a certain amount of points and we have to allocate those points to the classes that we want for the rest of our time at Darden. And we are trying to be strategic about which classes we take and when, because some of them are all online, or you get a week long, or they're only on Saturday and only on Sunday during our on-grounds time. And so we're thinking about taking a class that's all online and also in person. And that gives us the flexibility of one day at least per month where we can come in and sit together and use our time to do case practice with each other, because we don't have any classes, because we chose to do an all online class. And so that day is now free for us. And so that's kind of one way we're being strategic about our time. And in terms of, trying to carve out time while you're doing class and work, I'm not going to lie, it's probably going to be very hard, especially for people who have kids, people who have pets. I know for myself and my wife, my wife goes to work. She's a nurse and she works on site every day and then comes home pretty late at night, and I'm starting class. And so trying to disperse activities related to household cleaning, or, who's taking out the dog, who's cooking dinner, trying to make sure that you have a schedule set up ahead of time. And even for people who are listening, just think about how you can, allocate your time to best help yourselves when you're going through this program. But once again, like Rem said, the learning team helps a lot. You can assign each other different cases so that each of you have lightened the load and then come together one time per week and explain like, hey, this is, the main highlights of this case. Yeah, and I've done this, like I've written up some notes. I'm going to give you my notes so that you can pull them up during class. And if you get cold called in a class, you have the notes in front of you and you can say, this case is about XYZ, and it's no big deal. So the learning team, I think, is essential to helping with the lightening of the load.
Yeah, that's right. Don't try to do this on your own. Well, it's not necessary. You got all of these people to help you out. So, well, kind of building on Josh, you got us started on this like advice end of things. And you're right. You should be having those conversations about within your household, the other people in your life, like division of labor. What can you help out with? What can they help you with as you go through the program? And Rem, you also touched on this point. You can bring those people into the process because they are very much part of your executive MBA experience. And so what's one piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. The first is you're going to be okay. It sounds like a lot, and I know I was intimidated heading into the program. And like Josh said, like sometimes it's a lot of effort, but people really want you to succeed. Your classmates want you to succeed. It's collaborative. No one is competing on trying to pull you down or in something like that. And so if you ever find yourself needing help, there are 10 hands that go up immediately. The other thing I'd say is just keep your goals in mind. Like it's going to be very difficult to be 100% in all aspects of your life. Like if you're really trying to focus on family, then take some time, lean on your classmates, focus on family. If you've got a really big project at work, well, same sort of situation. Maybe lean in on work a little bit and then lean on your family to kind of help out at home. You kind of flex your priorities and your time appropriately, and it shifts throughout the program. And then just the last thing to tie back to keeping your overall goal in mind. My goals coming into the program were to switch industries and career paths, and also to learn a lot. And that's kind of a different goal than undergrad. Like maybe when you're working on a bachelor's degree, you really want to get straight A's and everything. And yes, there is some focus on learning, but I know that when I was in college, I was mostly focused on, let me make sure my grades are great. And I'm not going to say that grades don't matter in the MBA program, because they do, but my focus now is more on, I want to make sure that I learn. And maybe in undergrad, maybe I'd get a 90 on a test, but if I took that test 6 months later, I'm not sure I would have passed it. And now my focus is maybe I want to get an 80 on the test, but make sure that I really, really understand it. So 5 years from now, when I run into that business concept, I'd still pass the test and I've really learned something and retained some knowledge. So I would just say overall, you can do it. It's going to be okay. Make sure you're clear on your goals, which may change during the program, and then just keep the big picture in mind.
All good advice. Wow, multiple pieces of advice coming from Rem. That's great. I would say being very clear about your priorities. It's a steady drumbeat on the podcast across both the Experience Darden and the ExecMBA podcast. The clearer you can be about what you want to get out of this experience, and recognize in a world in which you have a finite amount of time, a finite amount of energy, that priority list is really going to help you navigate those times when, okay, I can't do everything. So what's most important here? Thank you, Rem. All right, Josh, word of advice?
That's a tough act to follow. I know I would echo Rem with saying to put your priorities, like what are your priorities? What are you trying to get out of the program? I had a classmate who came up to me not that long ago and said, hey, I want to get a promotion at work, but I want to do well in class, but I also have kids. What am I supposed to do? I'm failing at all three. And so, it's just, what is your priority? Is your priority trying to use the program to pivot into a new career? Because then, maybe focus less on work, even though that's where you're getting your income. Focus less on work and focus more on the pivot, on learning as much as you can in this new area that you want to pivot into. Definitely always family first. So if anything goes on, family first. And our professors are understanding too. If you message them and say, hey, I've got something going on, they're pretty understanding when you do that. As well as I'll echo again, the learning team. You can't do this on your own. There are other people around you who can't do it by themselves either. And so, when you all of you come together and work on a problem, then you can do some great things.
It's an interesting point, Josh. If you have like 5 priorities, do you actually have a priority?
Right, yeah.
This sort of, you can't, all those things can't be one. So, and I think Rem acknowledged this, like what's important to you or where you are in this process or how you're thinking about things will continue to evolve over the course of this program. I mean, life won't remain static. You will go through school. Some quarters will be easier or harder for you depending upon the classes that you're taking. Y'all are about to enter the elective period, which I do think is a time when students feel like they have a bit more of a handle on things from a schedule, from a time standpoint. You're picking your classes, you're choosing your schedule to a certain extent. And then the other thing, your career goals sort of ebb and flow. Where you start is not necessarily where people end in this process. And so those priorities will shift around. But the more you can really be clear with yourself and think about, okay, this is what's really important to me right now. And recognizing that, like, sometimes that'll be school and sometimes it won't be. And that's part of the Executive MBA student journey. Well, Josh, Rem, such a pleasure having y'all here on the podcast and talking with you. Good luck with everything you have going on. Everybody in y'all's class stays so busy all the time, doing so many things.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you, Brett. This has been a great time. So thanks for inviting us to come on.
Yeah, likewise. I really appreciate having the opportunity to be here and share our experience. I know I got a lot out of the podcast when I was deciding on programs.
And that was my interview with Remington Roth and Josh Rubbelke, 2 leaders of the Executive MBA Consulting Club here at the Darden School of Business. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at exec, that's EXEC, MBA at darden.virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.